All right, welcome back everyone to another episode of Pathways to Insight. As usual, I've got Mary with me. How are you, Mary?
Hey, Emmanuel.
Hi. Today we have a special guest. And I think we've been talking together offline to do a bunch of things together, and this is the first thing we're collaborating on, so I'm really, really excited. So I want to introduce Erica. How are you?
Hey, hey.
Hey. How's your day going, Erica?
Today's Wednesday, it's hump day, and it's the day that the price guide launched. So how do you think I'd be feeling?
Exactly. I know, that's why I asked you. I asked you. To be honest, I haven't had a chance to see if the changes are the same as what's happened in the recommendations that came out, which was only what? Wow, the recommendations only came out mid to late last week, and then we've already got the pricing changes directly, and it's interesting the timeframes, but let's not get into that yet. So I'm sure it's been a busy day. Has it affected you at all, Mary, the changes that have come out? Like practically?
No, not practically. But we, in all fairness, we kind of got off pretty easily because we had a price increase, so I can't really complain about that. But Erica, why don't you, a woman who needs an introduction, you can introduce yourself.
I always have an introduction, always. So everyone, hey, I'm Erica. I'm your friendly BDM, but I'm not just a BDM, I'm a BDSM from ADSR, otherwise known as Advanced Disability Services and Respite. I'm also a mum to a rock star neurodiverse child named Ollie, who is the light of my world and the reason I do what I do. My role varies from day to day. Not just being a BDM, but I'm also a support coordinator with my own caseload. So I'm out there actually supporting people day to day, changing lives, working out what is what, telling a plan manager, no, you need to claim this, or whatever it may be, and even supporting participants to tribunal. I even had my own win this week. So pretty excited to say, hey, this is what's happening in the space. And my other job, not only doing business development, is that doing events, doing all in gala for our participants, giving them opportunities to experience life and break down those barriers. And then volunteer life, I'm actually the State Commissioner for Scouts New South Wales for inclusion. So I am now taking that job into the volunteer space and ensuring that Scouts across the state of New South Wales stays inclusive and everyone has a chance to be who they want to be.
Can I ask about that just quickly? It's a little off topic and was not part of the questions, but that really interests me. What does that actually involve?
So I get to oversee what inclusion looks like. So everything from not just disabilities, but to our queer community, to our religions, everything, and ensuring that leaders are equipped, youth members are supported, everyone, so that they have the opportunity to do camps, events, whatever it may be, providing training, doing conferences. I get to do everything. I love it.
It's a lot of different hats.
Yeah, lots of different hats. But at the end of the day, I love my bubbles as well, because bubbles is what makes us resilient. And having drawn that into my creative presentations recently, I even linked bubbles and burnout together. I don't know how I did it, but I did it.
Was that a Passion in Action you did that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, Passion in Action was bubbles.
That was when I first seen you live in the flesh. And as I get there, Erica was doing her presentation. Then about 5 or so minutes later, the whole room was filled with thousands of bubbles.
Wow.
It was insane. It was amazing.
It was probably, the view I had was you had 80 adults opening up their bubble wands, courtesy of Kmart, and blowing bubbles, and the smiles on people's faces, and realizing, okay, we can actually link. There was actually a point to it, linking bubbles to passion and saying how some bubbles need help, some bubbles will last a long time, some are big, some are small, and just to see people's faces was just amazing. Like, that was one of my best ones ever.
It was
I think you guys need to get Kmart to sponsor your next event.
I know, right?
That's not a bad idea, actually, Mary. Don't give her ideas; she will.
I'll work something out.
You're a very, very busy person. What does an average day look like for you?
No 2 days are the same.
Yeah.
So it could be anything from planning events. Obviously with changes coming up is looking at how can we get the information out to parents, out to families. It could be talking to a school. I do a lot of work with the school leavers because at ADSR we have day programs and we have 2-day programs. So all support needs, doing school tours, talking to families about what they need to do for their plan review. We just launched our school holiday program, so we support our under 18s now. So even talking to families about, hey, we need support after school, what can we do? Right through to training our support coordination team on best practices and things like that.
I'm gonna slightly get into the conversation now, because I'm interested to hear your perspective. And it's maybe not, again, I do this a lot, and we spoke about this before we started, the ADHD brain, or the self-diagnosed ADHD brain that flows everywhere. And you raised a point that I wanted to ask that's kind of on topic. When changes come through, I'd love to hear your perspective of what is the impact on the support coordination service. Obviously, there's an impact to participants. I understand that, but I want to hear your, like, you know, we get a pricing change or we get all these different changes. Okay, what next? What does support coordinators have to do to get that information where it needs to be? Because not everyone sees it straight away.
No. And I think a good support coordinator needs to be across everything. You need to have your finger on the pulse absolutely everywhere, whether that's literally an email that comes through, whether it's you've gone and done a Google search, whatever it may be. But I literally tell our team, when you hear something new, take a deep breath and go, all right, what does this mean? I need to read it. I need to know it inside out, back to front, upside down, and then go, how does this affect my participants? How is this going to translate into real world application? I've always seen that the NDIS has people sitting in their castles looking down on us. Us at grassroots levels, we're the ones who see it, how it makes it work, all those sort of things. So if they say something new, I go, okay, let's read it. But then tomorrow it could change. So a good support coordinator is going to pivot every single second. I will then think about that Friends meme when they're trying to move the couch, moving the couch and stuff, and you pivot. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's, I guess also as a support coordinator, it's really scary because you don't know when the change is going to come. Today, you're going to sit there and do a plan review, and then bam, you're going, woohoo, you've got to win. But then tomorrow, it could be something totally different.
How do you keep your finger on the pulse, like, considering that, like, information kind of comes from all angles? Like, what does that process look like for you guys?
Obsession.
Oh, it's an obsession. You've literally got to go, okay, I need to know this, and this. Whether it's across social media, so you'll see there's a group on Facebook that has like thousands of members, and I've steered clear of that particular group because everyone is just going, well, I got this, why can't I have that? And they've got the wrong information. And then you go across to LinkedIn, where it's professional Facebook, and you're hearing what your colleagues are saying and going, okay, what about this? And you get some really good conversations going. And then you're looking down NDIA website, but their page is not updated. So we've then got to make it into this puzzle. And every bit of information we've got, go, okay, what is this? I might call someone that I trust in the industry who's been, say, in the space since it started, and go, what is your thoughts on this? Where do you think this is going to come from? Being a creative person, I don't like black and white. I need to have all the colors and things like that. But to help understand this, I need to talk to someone who's got the opposite brain function to me to help break it down. But support coordinators need to have the confidence to go and ask those questions, build upon their own people. I think I even said it recently, you need your own village. You have villages for different types of things, whether it's your home village, family village, but also at work. We need our colleagues. We may work for different providers. Who cares? At the end of the day, we actually all in this together. I was going to start singing a song.
That's
then.
a High School Musical song, yeah.
High School Musical
I sung it in my mind. Yeah.
We go together. I'm not going to start singing.
It is very true, though, because I think one thing that I also think that people often miss when it comes to that responsibility for support coordinators is also the confidence to make a decision, because ultimately we're the ones reading the information. I do the same. I often speak to a lot of key trusted individuals across the industry to kind of just spitball what I'm reading, because it's never black and white. As much as, you know, legislation may indicate as such, it's not necessarily black and white. And then because there's a lot of things coming in different times, often it can become quite confusing as to when that rule actually applies. So then sometimes in certain situations you've got where, hang on, yes, that's the rule for the future, but it actually isn't the rule for right now. So for support coordinators, sometimes you have situations when, you're training your team, but then, built up experience really helps in having confidence to make a decision, because you kind of get an understanding, a feel for that hidden ethos or whatever you want to call it that the NDIS is trying to achieve. And then you can go, okay, well, I understand roughly what they're trying to do here. So therefore you can push it in a direction, but it's never black and white. And the confidence to make that call it takes a lot of time. And you can't really equate for that. Well, you probably could, but.
Well, I think that's also where you see support coordinators are burnt out because there's so much going on. Support coordinators are just, some people come to support coordination and go, okay, cool, I can organize a diary, I can do Google, I can read stuff, but at the end of the day, a support coordinator isn't just a secretary. A support coordinator is someone that is, I would say, it's a manager, like event manager. It could be, I don't know, anything. A lawyer. It could be, it could be a mum. It could be a parent who just juggles so many different things and what's going on. It's just like when your child's growing up and well, what's happening to my kid's now gone from being an 8-year-old to a 10-year-old. I need to know what's happening, but I got to do that for support coordination. I need to know everything, and a good support coordinator will keep on touch of everything, keep up to date with everything.
And that's where I went to the only word that comes to mind is obsession.
It's obsession. It becomes a hyper focus.
Totally.
Yes, there we go. See, we talk about our autistic superstars. So my son Ollie is autistic, and his hyper focuses go from everything from Minecraft to Band-Aids to Ed Sheeran. So yeah,
that's
pretty eclectic. So then my obsession, and it's what's kept me in the industry for almost 20 years. I don't look a day over 21. That keeps me I'm obsessed with what's going on, because it's not only affecting my job, what I do day to day, but now it affects me as a mum. It affects my child.
I'm going to ask you a question. It's a little cheeky.
Go for it.
Do you see a lot of confusion out there in terms of differing opinions? I do see it as well, personally. But I was just curious to see from your perspective, do you see a lot of confusion that causes delays? It causes misalignment of what can and can't happen in certain situations, which then makes things more complicated when they really shouldn't be?
Yeah, I see it every day. I see it right from talking to a family member who goes, oh, you're going to do everything for me, and this is what it says. This is what that piece of information says to me. And then you go, well, I'm going to make that work. And then you're like, but all I can do as a support coordinator is give you that information that I understand. It is your decision. But if you turn around and get audited by the NDIA, you've done something that's against policy and guidelines, that comes back to me. There is... People go, how much plan? So I've got a child who's 11 years old, who's autistic and level 2. Well, how much funding have you got? Because what I think I've got isn't enough. And then it's like, well, hang on. It depends on the impact of the disability on your everyday life. What do you need help with? What do you need to do to be able to shower, dress, be a kid, whatever it may be? And I think that's what gets missed. You get all these big words thrown around: reasonable, necessary, your choice and control. They all get thrown around on person-centered. That's the other favorite one.
Value for money.
Your value for money. They all get thrown around, and people go, well, it's reasonable and necessary that I should have a robo vacuum. It's reasonable and necessary that I should have someone who comes in and cleans my house for me every week. Okay, some cases, yeah, house cleaner, great. But my favorite has always been, it's reasonable and necessary for the NDIA, the government, to pay for my shopping, to pay for everyday expenses, to pay for my rent. And then we know when people do things like that, we know we're going to end up with the outlist, the famous outlist of October 2024. We're going to end up with lists like that. Yeah, funding periods, we end up with that. Why shouldn't I have funding periods? Is a great one. I know why it was introduced. Help budget. We know the scheme has blown out of proportion funding-wise. We know that. Funding periods for me is a budgeting tool. I'm not a fan of budgeting. I cannot budget to save my life. That's my husband's job. But when it comes to breaking down the funding and knowing how much as a support coordinator I can spend per quarter, that's going to help me. If someone needs more of that money, if someone runs out of that fund, I'll go, hey, I don't want to say I can't help you, but we've got to reevaluate. We've got to look at what this is. I had a participant recently that blew through their allocation and they had 13 weeks. So it's a 13-week allocation. They blew through their funding in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Therefore leaving them at risk of no support to anything like that. Go to the NDIA, say this is what's happened, things like that. You basically get a slap on the wrist for blowing through funding. And you're like, but hang on, this is why it should happen. Or you're on the flip side, you've got the NDIA who goes, no, you don't need that funding. No, what, you don't need 24/7 support. You're fully reliant on a wheelchair and peg feeding and things like that.
So how do you think the current price schedule is going to change those conversations that you're already having? Do you think it's just going to be more of the same, or is there something else you need to start sort of conveying now?
I think the conversation will change slightly with respite. So because it's gone from STA to STR to STA in the price guide. They can't decide what word they want to use.
Did it really?
Go figure. Yeah, go figure. I sat in a workshop earlier this week to say, hey, breaking down the price guide and things like that. And I think you've gone from, I think for respite, it's going to help work out what is included in the cost, because it used to be a 24-hour block flat charge. Now it's broken down to participant accommodation, support work accommodation, and the hourly rate. But then the questions are raised then, or how do providers cover the costs and things like that, and also the rate of the sleepover has gone up. The response from the agency was that majority of people who have respite have sleepovers. They don't have awake support. So it's raising questions about how we do this. The other change that really flagged it for us as a provider is around the community access funding and the hourly rate. Yes, we're a registered provider, but now as a BDM, I've got to do extra work to go, hey, still come to us as a registered provider. We're value for money. We're all this sort of stuff, instead of going down to the local unregistered provider who's charging 10% less. So it's just, have they actually thought about it in practice? Or
well, I think this kind of comes into my next question of do you think that this current price schedule is moving towards or getting us closer to what families need, or further away?
Probably everyone questions the value for something. As an example, we know that psychologists went up another $20. And
sorry,
Mary's face was
I know, but again, I look at it go, okay, behavior support. I know it's still it's the other category of psychology. $252 an hour. What are we getting for $252 an hour? We're going to qualify professional, yes. In some cases, are we getting a cut and paste job? Are we getting the actual strategies? Are we actually getting a plan that can be implemented? Are we getting a plan that has strategies that fade out to improve, to increase independence, build capacity? There's the other buzzword, build capacity. Or are we just getting a piece of paper that says, hey, cool, what did I spend $250 an hour for? Then there's other, dietitians went down, exercise physiologists went down. So it's kind of going, well? Yeah, it's just these are professionals who have qualifications. Why are they not being paid for what they do, that sort of thing? Whereas on the flip side, while support coordination didn't change for, the 7th year in a row, as a support coordinator, you don't need a qualification. Technically, you don't have to have it unless you go specialist. My qualification literally is a diploma in leadership and management, a Cert 4 in disability, but I've got 20 years experience. But if I was an exercise physiologist, I would expect to have those qualifications, someone who knows what they're doing. You're trusting them to deliver a support to improve your mobility, your strength, whatever it may be. Not just the dude who goes, hey, I'm good at sports, let's do this.
Look, just commenting quickly on the STA changes, because I got used to calling it STR. I'm a big fan of transparency, and I think there was a period of time in which STR wasn't used appropriately, right? And we all know that. And I think I don't mind the changes, and I think it also allows a little bit of freedom for certain providers. I mean, I'm not an STA provider, so I'm happy to be proven wrong, but it adds a little bit of flexibility. It just creates a little bit of extra complexity when you're creating rosters, I'd assume, when you're putting things together. I mean, in the past, for example, we've had participants go to respite or short-term accommodation and not stay the whole time, and then we have to negotiate. But how do you negotiate when it's blocked? It became so in this case you can put and then we always knew that funding for respite can actually be done in the home, but realistically you can take that funding flexibly and go, okay, instead of using it in an external facility, we can use. So I think it aligns closer with those things, which is great. The thing on the last thing that you mentioned around community participation for me is we know that I'll talk about support workers and independent support workers. Not every independent support worker has the systems and processes naturally, because they're not an organization, to provide data, information, support work notes and quoting and all this stuff that registered providers will provide, right? Because they have to. So maybe that's what they're trying there. And if that's the case, I get it. But also then I didn't think about your point when you're talking about, okay, well, then they're just going to go to the cheaper guy because they don't care, you know, and how that operates, which is a very good point. What do you see as being the biggest impact to the industry from all these changes? Not just the ones that are coming now, like the ones we've had recently, the legislative change. Like, what do you see being the biggest impact?
That's a hard one, because if I look at it from a parental point of view, Ollie is at risk of he could be taken off the scheme, because we don't know whilst he's over the age of thriving kids, he could possibly still be one of those 400,000 people, whatever it may be, the random number that the government chose, who could come off the scheme, and then I'll be left at going, but he needs support. So I think that it's a bit of everything. You need the funding to have support at home. You've got participants who require 24/7 support. They can't do things for themselves. You've got carers who are hitting burnout, so they need the people in the home. They need then someone to come in and help maintain their home clean and whatever it may be, so they can focus on caring. Then on the other side, we need funding to be able to go out and do things. I think that, unfortunately, the media, as we know, the media focuses on all our negativity. They focus on the support worker who sits there on their phone, not engaging. They focus on the providers who've got all this money, who go and do big expensive things like buy their cars or parties or whatever it may be, and they've taken away from what we actually do. We need the funding to do these things. We need the funding, but how it's delivered, how it's administered, I think that's what really needs to look at. Whilst it's now been around, what are we up to? Year 12 of the scheme, I think, like 2014.
10 or 11.
I can't remember. I was part of an organisation who was in the trial site back in 13, 14, and going from block funding into NDIS, and it's like, oh my God, okay. I then look at going, well, that's given it the funding's there for that individual instead of being locked up with a provider. That's a great thing. But then you've given people you're giving them this funding, going, great, cool, I'm going to do this, but not how to use it, not how to break it down. Then you've implemented the local area coordinators. We know they have caseloads of 500 people, random number, 500 odd people who they've got to try and pass all the information to, but even they can't keep up. And then it's depending on how they interpret it. Then you've got support coordinators. So I think have the structure, but you need the supports around it. And that's where people like support coordinators come in, providers who are doing the right thing, providers who keep up to date with stuff. The families have to trust us to help them, if that makes any sort of sense.
It's a grey, complex space that I think, look, I understand that a lot of these changes, as you said earlier on, were focused on sustainability and budget control. And I mean, the biggest pressures are, things like funding periods on the surface is great, but on reality for complex participants in that bubble is a really dangerous thing. The idea of having support needs assessment, that's I believe delayed. And also for anyone that doesn't know, the inquiry has been delayed, which means the legislation is being delayed, and all those new framework stuff has been delayed at the moment, which is fair enough. ideally the support needs assessment then complicates the idea for complex participants, because you've got a situation where you've got this standardized assessment applied to a complex scenario, and then you know, which we haven't got details yet on how this is going to work, but then you go to ART to address it, but then they send you back to ART to support needs assessment. So my overarching opinion is I actually don't think that all of we were so far away from a good system. I think that the for me personally, and just throwing my 2 cents in the ring, is that the compliance quality practice standards was the area to focus on, and really placing pressure on those side of things. Now, I'm not suggesting, because I've had this conversation before, that necessarily registration in its current form is the answer. What I'm suggesting is that if I was to leave my vulnerable person with someone, I would want to know that they're adhering to some level of quality control, being audited, making sure that they're doing the right thing, like any hospital or, you know, whatever the case, but there needs to be accountability for things if they're not going right. And I think there was a wild west a little bit for too long. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that from the perspective of people who are vulnerable. Like, if there is no recourse, you're unfortunately going to get individuals that may not necessarily share the same moral obligations that others do. I'm putting it politely.
Wondering, Erica, like what your opinion is on that, because I believe a statement went out recently from the NDIS saying that regardless of your registration status, you're still required to adhere to the code of conduct if you're providing services to a participant. So I'm wondering, like, do you think registration really will make any kind of difference, you know, from your perspective?
There should be a level of registration. I think it may come down to the size of the organization that you are. So, like the big names, you hear that the big names are the ones that get in trouble, and then things get shoved aside, and it's business as usual. If they've got the resources to a cover up or whatever it may be, and then just keep going. But then you've got smaller providers who don't have the finances or anything like that, or it might just be like the mum and dad type business who says, hey, we want to support, we have hearts to it and things like that. But still, at the end of the day, you still need to have some records of what you did with that person that day. Whether it's you took them shopping, if they had an accident, you still need that sort of thing to cover yourself, because then you can be turned around and be sued. Like in Scouts, for example, a number of years back, there was the Royal Commission into numerous things like child sexual abuse and things like that. And for a very long time, people didn't want to be part of Scouts. In that time, we've implemented things such as 2 deep leadership. So me as an adult, I can't be by myself with a youth member. Why isn't that the same with a person with a disability? If we see something in Scouts, we have to log it. We have to report it. So again, in disabilities, why are we not reporting things? Why are we letting our people with disabilities, our most vulnerable in the community, lose their voice, be unsafe, because someone just goes, no, I don't want to report it. As a parent, I'm trusting someone else to look after my child. I'm having been in the industry for a long time. I'm very reluctant to have support workers in my house because it's a crossover. But I still need to trust someone to look after him. So I send him to school. I have to trust the education department they're doing the right thing by him. And then what's my avenue for fighting for him? How do I do that? We know that the commission in the NDIS space takes forever to respond to something. You hear about deaths in care and things like that. I still go back to the lady in Adelaide now, like 5 years ago. She was left by herself and she was not found for a week or 2 weeks. And she was supposed to have support workers in every day. Where were those support workers? Even I had one of my own participants a number of years back, and I thought it was very unusual. I hadn't heard from him over a long weekend. I'm going, what is it? What's happening? I ended up calling the police, and unfortunately, he had passed away over that time. But if I hadn't done that check-in, we wouldn't have known. So we have to be accountable for other people's life. This is something that really, I'm starting to get, come on, people.
No, I feel you.
It's just a thing, like it's just an instant report. If something happens, if you are injured at work, we report it to Work Cover. If a participant has an injury, we need to report it. We need to tell the families what's happened to their loved one. If they haven't, we record in complex care. We record everything they do. So their shower, they've been to the bathroom, they've had pad changes, whatever it may be, because dignity. Hello, who wants to be sat in an incontinence pad that hasn't been changed for 12 hours? That then leads to we've got all the infections and things like that. Like, it's just and also then think you have your dignity of risk versus your duty of care. We have a duty of care to these participants. They're trusting us to look after them, to do these things. Why can't they eat? What? It's just
There needs to be accountable.
You do need to be accountable, and there's a reason for it.
You can't have look, unfortunately.
Well, do you think the current system meets that need for accountability?
No, I don't think so. I don't think anyone does.
Yeah,
no one I've spoken to in the industry does. What I mean by practice standards is, I think that in the current registration side, I think that what I would have done is just focus on the practice standards. Now, we're all making changes towards that. I like the idea of extra accountability. I like all these things that they're doing. I don't mind the funding periods. Like with anything, rollout and implementation is always key factors. So how you implement something, how you roll something out, how you provide information. I know they've got certain timeframes that they need to adhere to. I love the extra fraud, quality checking for fraud and all those things. 1,000%. I think they did a massive bunch of random testing on people's invoices to see how quickly and how accurately they could respond to actions that are being completed. I more than agree with all those things, because I think they're things that should happen on a consistent basis. I do think that, and actually I'm going to ask Erica this question. We'll move on to more positive ones, because I don't think it's all doom and gloom. But the one thing I really wanted to ask you is who is going to be affected the most? Is it providers, participants, like who individual workers, like who from all this whole group of changes, who will be the ones that
are participants? It's going to be our participants, because they're going to miss out on services. So, yeah, we've seen, even recently, you've seen so many support coordination providers leave because we know the changes are coming for support coordination. We don't know. We know it's needed, but then you've got providers are closing down, or you've got providers being bought out by other providers. You've got people just going, well, I don't know. But at the end of the day, if a provider leaves the industry, they go, no, that's it, then there's a group of participants who've got nothing. If ADSR shut down tomorrow, there goes 150 families, or no, almost 200 families without supports, without somewhere to live, someone to come and help with personal care, someone to take them out, social activities, everything. That it'd be gone. And where would they be? Some of them will be at home with families who cannot care for them, aging parents and things like that, to be living on the streets. So it's like, get something in place to keep them going, but also have something in place that those providers who aren't doing the right thing, I could use some very colourful language, but I'm not going to, that aren't doing the right thing, and get them to pull their socks up and realise it's not about, the funding is there for us to do our job. We need the funding, but it's not about the funding. It's not about having someone who comes in. I've trained, in my previous roles, I've trained support workers, I've managed support workers, and they go, oh, no worries, I'll have a shift. Oh, well, okay, maybe. So I'll use the example of a SIL home that on average, let's say you've got 4 people living in that home, they've got $250,000 each, right? Just an average number. There's $1 million in funding. When you break that down, one person goes because you can't do your job, there goes some shifts. The next person goes because you still can't do your job, and what's happening, you're not meeting their needs. There goes $500,000 worth of funding. Where's that funding gone? That's followed the participant. They've gone somewhere else. And what have you left with? You're left with nothing to do. No work. What are you going to do? You're going to go find somewhere else to go. So I think support workers need to know the funding is there to the participant. It's there so the support workers have a job. But at the end of the day, it's our participants. They're the ones who need our support to be just like everybody else.
I'm wondering, just so that we do end on a positive note, do you predict any positive outcomes from the current price changes?
I always like to say there is, I guess, and also I've been on a high this week because I had a big positive outcome. It took, and I actually shared it recently on LinkedIn, that after 4 years of fighting and a trip to tribunal, I've got a participant who received her SDA funding.
Wow.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So she was this young, I'll say she's a young lady. She was basically said she wasn't disabled enough to move into a specialist disability accommodation. Excusez-moi, excuse me, what do you mean? And so being knocked back, but after 4 years in the trip to tribunal, they decided, oh, you know what? You do meet the requirements. So now she, in her mid-40s, can move out of the family home into her own place, which is purpose-built. She can go and watch her beloved NRL team play. She can have friends over. She can do all that stuff. So that's it working.
Amazing.
So that I'm holding on to that a lot more. And then when I hear the sad stories about people not getting this, that, and the other, I go, my first question is, how can I help you? I'm going to help you take out all this stuff that's happening with Price Guide. And what are we going to do? We're going to find a way.
I will say this. I know there's been a lot of not so good stories. However, I think that all of us agree we want a sustainable scheme in the future. I think all of us understand that this is, unless I'm mistaken, a world's first scheme supporting the disability community that in other countries they don't have. I think we also need to understand that it's very young, and doing something for the first time requires, there will be mistakes made. I think like when I'm training staff members, it's like, listen, you're going to make a mistake. I'm not concerned about the mistake. I'm concerned about what you do next. And that is the thing for me that I tend to focus on. I mean, I always use this as a precursor, but if you had a business that went from 0 to 750,000 participants now, what would your staffing look like? What would your systems look like? What would your legislation look like? What would your policies look like? Do you think everything would be black and white? Do you think that you wouldn't find gaps? Do you think that all of these things are going to happen? Now, is it, and this is where I come down to the I guess the positive or the balanced approach on this, is the changes aren't bad. Like, a lot of what we're saying is the targeting areas that we're all saying need to be addressed. Like, we need to address fraud. We need to make sure there's accountability. We all want it. All the people in the industry that I've spoken to, including yourself, Mary, everyone, that we all want and do not mind accountability. If there is a better way of doing things, we'll do it. Don't you worry. But I think, unfortunately, it needs to be balanced in the implementation. So how are you doing it? What's the actual impact? So I do think that you can't have a black and white answer necessarily, but you can say, okay, well, the responsibility is on participants, providers, and the NDIA to make this work. And I think, we kind of all need to listen to each other, work with each other, and ultimately understand what the NDIS is hoping to achieve in the long-term future. If it means getting people back into independent lives, which is what I understand it was always meant to be, then perhaps we need to address certain areas that, where it's lacking in that capacity building space, or lacking that forward planning, And so I don't mind, but it's the implementation for me that is always going to be the important stuff. So, but to end it on a nice space, because it isn't all doom and gloom, do you have a message for participants, families, providers, or something that you think that they should take away from this chat and from the changes in general?
It's exactly what you're saying. It's not all doom and gloom. Like, it's actually, there is a rainbow. There is a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. But at the end of the day, we need to ask questions. There's no such thing as a silly question. If you don't ask, you don't know. Reach out to people, compare. I even tell families at expos when they come and say all these providers, they go, OMG, there's so many, what do I do? I literally say to them, collect all the expo flyers, make little notes about who you met, things like that, lay it out and go, literally go back through and go, what am I looking for? Did they answer my question? Did they give me something really cool to take away? And then go back and ask those questions, interview providers. We interview support workers and everything to work. Flip that back to families, interview them, find out to a provider what makes you different, what's your unique selling point that makes me trust you. And then for providers out there, can we bring collaboration back to being a clean word and not just something that gets thrown around, and we are literally working together?
Amen.
Please. It's not just because the support coordinator has connections and does things like that. Support coordinators are not gatekeepers. Support coordinators are working in the best interests of our participants. Don't just go out to them saying, I need referrals. Talk to us. Find out what your participants, what they're needing, what can you do, how can you help them, and build that trust. Other than that, you're in the wrong industry. Go away.
And is there any projects that you're working on that you'd like to share?
Oh, projects. I'm always working on something. I always have something in the pipeline. I guess we've got the Hawkesbury Disability Expo, which is a lovely community feel expo for our regional people. I call Hawkesbury Regional. That's coming up at the end of August. There is an event coming up which is being supported by a local member of parliament. Woohoo, go me. But
Wow.
the big thing, the big thing that is in the planning is called the All In Gala, which is a free event for participants, fully supported by the industry, right from sponsorship to lucky door prizes. And it is a free night for participants to get dressed up, dance, have a 2-course meal, meet new friends, all that sort of thing. We're in our 3rd year. We're a Zest Award nominee last year. We had up to 400 people attend in 2025. And it's just an amazing night. They
When
get
is
dressed
it?
up. 14th of November at Westlake's Club in Lamia. And we also support the Formal Project, which is a small charity in Campbelltown, where they actually dressed up to 300 of our participants over the last 2 years, where they get to keep their outfit. It's just an amazing night. It's not about networking and things like that. It's literally our industry coming together to provide an opportunity for that participant who never got their formal.
Oh, that is so amazing. So everyone who's listening, you've got to go and support the gala because this is such a great initiative.
We love it.
And how do they reach out to you, Erica?
You can reach out to the allingala@gmail.com.
Perfect. I'll put
Otherwise,
that on.
find me on LinkedIn and send me a message. My photo on LinkedIn is me in a formal dress going, I can take on the world.
Well, that's amazing. And I want to say a last massive thank you to coming and having this chat. I want to say one thing. I know we've spoken to each other a number of times, but it's I guess one of the first times we've sat down and had an in-depth conversation, and I realize how closely aligned we are in this space. And I know Mary's nodding her head because I've had these conversations with her too, so it's not just me saying it. But I really appreciate it, you coming on and sharing your information and your insights and your heart and your passion, a little bit about yourself. So but for everyone else, you know where Erica is. I will post her details that if you want to go and support the All In Gala or speak to her about someone that may need some help, I'll put it in there. But for now, if you would love for us to talk about something in particular, put it in the comments. If not, I'll see you on the next one. Bye.
See ya.